This is the last week that we will be looking at Leviathan. Is that what it's called? Leviathan? Last week we're looking at Leviathan. This is the last week before we enter into a new meta, where we enter into a scary meta, the Pariah Nexus. Now, I've got an extra little treat for you guys. Thanks to the fantastic and heroic efforts of JCMS Meta Monday, the guy that puts this data together. As always, link down in the description below. Not only will we be looking at this week's data, we'll be looking at the last 8-week average as well. Now, some of you might be wondering, why are we looking at the last 8 weeks? Because that's when the last balanced data slate came out. For those of you that aren't sure what you're looking at, this is Meta Monday. Now, Meta Monday is put together, it's a website. The link to that website is down in the description below, and that will take you to this article right here, and you will see all the tournaments that were recorded this weekend, and you will get to see all the win rates for every single faction. So if you don't want to stick around and listen to me talk about it, you can go in there and have sort of your own little bit of analysis if you want to. I do highly encourage you to check out the website, and if you enjoy this kind of data, I do highly encourage you to consider supporting on Patreon. It's not my Patreon, by the way. Just saying, I couldn't do this data. I couldn't do these Meta Mondays without this data. If you guys enjoy this kind of shit, then he does have a Patreon that you can support on. So what we're looking at today is we have got the number of players, followed by the number of games won, next to the number of games played. Each faction will have a win rate, and this is the win rate for the weekend, and this is the win rate over the last 8 weeks. Because the reason the last 8 weeks is because that was when the last points update came out. That's right, we only got to use the new points for 2 months before GW updated them again. So, starting off at the bottom here, we have got the Adeptus Mechanicus. Oh, by the way, they're ranked. It seems, just to let you guys know, they are ranked by their 8-week win rate, not by their this week win rate. So, what we're looking at here is the overall performance of a faction in the last meta, since the last points update. Okay, so Adeptus Mechanicus. This week had 4. So Adeptus Mechanicus week came in bottom. So over the last 8 weeks, let's be clear here. Over the last 8 weeks, the Adeptus Mechanicus were the poorest performing faction. Okay, so they had this week they had only 4 players. They won 9 out of 18 games. So this week they had a 50% win rate. But over the last 8 weeks, they've only had a 40% win rate, and I don't think they've won. I think this is the and they did not win a single tournament in the last 8 weeks. So even with all those points changes and points cuts they got, they did not win a single tournament. Now this week we can see the Rad Zone core. One person, which is a very small sample size, went 2 and 5 of them and got a 40% win rate. The average for that faction, for that detachment, is 35%, which isn't great at all. It's clear that the cohort Cybernetica is the worst detachment because no one played it this week, and over the last 8 weeks, it only had a 26% win rate, which is shoddy. Data Psalm Conclave was similar. No one played it this week. Only 31% win rate over the last 8 weeks. Explorator Manipul. No one played it this week, but it did have a 43% win rate overall over the last 8 weeks. And then we get to Skitarii Hunter Cohort. And to no one's surprise, Skitarii Hunter Cohort is the highest performing Adeptus Mechanicus attachment. Basically, this is like a poor man's guard, really. The way the Skitarii Hunter Cohort works is you just take a fuckload of Skitarii and Skitarii related vehicles, and you just march wave after wave of them onto objectives, and hope that you can survive long enough to win some points, and just do sheer fucking bloody mindedness deliver some pretty overwhelming firepower. The problem with Skitarii Hunter Cohort is how expensive it was to collect the army. As Godlike Poet says, a poor man's guard not what AdMech price is. In fact, you guys are correct. It's the rich man's guard. I should probably say they were the wannabe guard. They were the wannabe guard, but they were to collect the tournament winning list for Skitarii to go. You had to drop about I think it was ridiculous, like $2,000 to $3,000. That's if you bought the models new in box from Games Workshop. So it's still about $3,000 from Games Workshop, $2,000 if you managed to get some secondhand. Either way, prohibitively expensive, and that's why even though it did have a 54% win rate this week and a 47% win rate overall, which is very respectable win rate, you never really saw the AdMech numbers climb high. It was just a great example of how price genuinely limited an army in game, which I think if I was Games Workshop, this is a very, very, very worrying faction, even with them changing it now, because sure, they're going to change AdMech now to be more elite and more powerful, that's fine, but what this showed, we're talking like the real life meta now, what this showed Games Workshop is there is a limit. Categorically, it's not a theory anymore. There is a limit. It doesn't matter how good a faction can be. It doesn't matter if Skitarii Hunter Cohort won 60-70% of its games. It doesn't matter. No matter how good it got, the players, people were real life price locked out of it. So yeah, that for me, I think that's a really big takeaway for Games Workshop. They've got to keep an eye on that. Now, moving on to the next faction, we have got Tyranids. Now, I don't think it's any surprise to people that have been watching these Meta Mondays and people who keep an eye on the meta themselves. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone to see the Tyranids down here in the bottom three. Since the release of 10th edition, Tyranids have had a problem. That problem has been a lack of anti-tank, a lack of ranged anti-tank in a very tank and monster heavy meta. That will change. The fact that Tyranids now get +1 strength in melee whilst they're within Synapse range, that's going to kick a lot of different bugs into different wounding brackets. For example, you take strength for Gene Stealers, you make them strength 5, suddenly they're wounding things like chimeras, rhinos, you dedicated transports, and we are on a mechanized meta, right? You're going to wound those mechanized elements on 5s rather than 6s. And it also starts pushing a lot of their melee anti-vehicle up. Just getting that +1 strength will often mean they'll be wounding on 4s rather than 5s, on 3s rather than 4s. Now the big thing is that they updated the casino cannon. So the Tyranids have the Tyran effect. It's got a very long range anti-tank gun, and it basically fired 2 Vanquisher shots. The problem was that its damage was 2d6, so sometimes you'd get both hits, get both wounds, and then just roll shite on the damage. Do anything. They've now changed to d6 + 6. So it's a true Vanquisher now, and I think between the strength and between the strength and then the casino cannon changes, I think this will be Tyranids might be in the bottom now, but I don't think they're going to be in the bottom going forward. I think that's going to be a couple of really good shots on the arms for them. So that's the sort of the meta looking forward. But what Tyranids in their own fucking meta, the Leviathan meta, ended up over the last 8 weeks with only a 42% win rate. But rather encouragingly, they were able to actually win 6 tournaments. Isn't bad. Now this week they had a 47% win rate, a little bit of a resurgence there. 26 players, and the Invasion Fleet remained the most popular choice with a 46% win rate. Versus a 40% over the last 8 weeks. Unending Swarm was very popular this week and actually saw a 50% win rate. And as we suspected, Unending Swarm had the highest win rate over the last 8 weeks. Unfortunately, Unending Swarm, I think, is going to suffer extremely with the changes to unending waves. Because apparently it's not an unending swarm, it's just a swarm. And apparently there are not unending waves, there is just a wave. You can only use unending waves once now, as per the balanced data slate. And so the ending swarm, I think we are seeing the end of the unending swarm. I would not be surprised if a lot of people jump away from that faction, because it does not have the damage output to physically... It doesn't have any damage output. The only way that this list won games was through sheer numbers. And it was very, very fun to play and very, very fun to play against. I had the number of people that I got, played my Pure Entry Guard and came away going, that's a fucking filthy list. Pretty much every tournament, and Simon, that I do the battle with, he said it as well. Every single person that I played an Ending Swarm with, even if they got beaten by it, said it was so fun seeing that many bugs on the board. Games Workshop, once again, I will reiterate, you should not have changed reinforcements and the like to once per game. You should have changed it to Shadow in the Warp. Shadow in the Warp. Shadow in the Warp. You should have changed it to Netcon Power Grid. You can always do it in Deployment Zone. You can do it in No Man's Land if you hold the majority of objectives. You can do it in your opponent's Deployment Zone if you control their objective. That's what it should be. That will balance it. Otherwise, the way that GW has done it, frankly, has taken an entire detachment and made it a joke. It is a joke that the unending swarm has an end. It is a joke that unending waves have an end. It's a bad joke without a punchline, frankly. So Tyranids, they're looking bad now, but I think we are going to see. I think we're going to see a big shift in what was working for the Tyranids to what is going to be working for the Tyranids. Next up we have got Dark Angels. Now, Dark Angels, it's kind of crazy that they're in the bottom 3, considering how dominant some of these detachments have been. And I think it goes to show that not all detachments are made equal. So, for example, there were 8 Dark Angels players this week, which is pretty low numbers. First time I was in that faction dip below double digits in a while. Now, overall, those 8 players were able to win 16 out of 38 games, giving them a 42% win rate this week, which is in line with their 42% average over the last 8 weeks. And Dark Angels were able to win 3 tournaments over the last 8 weeks, but none this week. Now, looking at the Dark Angels detachments, you just see how crazy this is. The Unforgiven Task Force, no players this week, 24% win rate over the last 8 weeks. The First Company, not that one, the Inner Circle Task Force, 1 player this week who did not win a single game. Inner Circle Task Force had a 0% win rate. The guy went 0-5 and overall only had a 31% win rate. And then you had the Company of Hunters, no one playing it this week, and it has a 33% win rate over the last 8 weeks. The Dark Angels Codex, it is clear, was a big bag of shit. All of the detachments were shit. They were cat shit wrapped in dog shit. Why Dark Angels even have a 42% win rate? Frankly, it's because of the regular Marine detachments, specifically Iron Storm Spearhead. Now, there's a few other ones, like Firestorm Assault did okay, but no one, over the last 8 weeks, but no one played it this week. Dark Angels have just been playing Green Iron Storm. That's it. 4 players, so half of the players this week were running Iron Storm, 60% win rate, 51% win rate on average over the last 8 weeks, making it the highest performing detachment this week and over the last 8 weeks. And over the last 8 weeks, the Iron Storm Spearhead was responsible for 100% of the Dark Angels tournament wins. So it is clear that GW did not get the Dark Angels detachment right. It is clear that the Dark Angels community it has not been embracing their fluffy detachments. Will a bunch of Terminators change that? because the Dark Angels got new and improved Terminators with the balanced data slate. Well, we'll have to wait until next week to find out. But out of it, I know that Dark Angels players, I know that they would rather be playing Deathwing. But right now, it's just impossible for them to do so. I really do hope that Deathwing make a triumphant comeback, because as sometimes as frustrating as it can be chewing through endless waves of Terminators, I would much rather get my shit pushed in by a Deathwing Terminator with a power fist than to have my cock blown off by a green Gladiator Lancer. So moving on to we've had one Space Marines, yes, but what about second Space Marines? Now, just want to say we've had a few super chats come in. So I want to say big thank you to Raging Horn, CJ, Gypsy, and Mark Batchelor. I will be getting to all of your super chats after I have done the next two factions. We'll do the bottom 5, then we'll get to you. So that will probably take me about between 5 and 10 minutes to do so. I've not missed you guys. I want to say thank you in advance for your patience. Okay, so Space Marines. Space Marines seeing a huge surge of players this week. Over 10% of players at tournaments this weekend were Space Marine players. That is phenomenal. Now we are seeing 57 players, 122 games played out of 270. 122 games won out of 277 games played, with a 44% win rate this week, which is pretty much in line with their 43% win rate over the last 8 weeks. Despite having a lot of players, Space Marines were only able to get one, this is vanilla Space Marines by the way, one tournament win in the last 2 months. Not really surprising. Space Marines, vanilla Space Marines, specialist Space Marines like Dark Angels, Blood Angels, and Black Templars and the like get everything that regular Space Marines get, and then they get their own special shit as well. So it's not really surprising to see that Space Marines are in the bottom 4. On top of it's not really surprising to see that they only had one tournament win, because a lot of people will be taking their vanilla Space Marine army and just saying it's Black Templars and just saying it's Blood Angels. Now, Space Marines, digging into this a little bit further, there's a few detachments here which seem to have done. Now, I do just want to actually flag something here. It seems actually highly unlikely that it could be possible, but it seems highly unlikely that we had 1, 2, 3, 4 detachments here who all played 10 games, who all had 10 players, who all won 23 out of 48 games, who all had a 48% win rate and a 42% win rate over the last 8 weeks. I think there might be a little bit of discrepancy in the data here. If we have 10 people playing fucking Imperial Fists, that would be that's a glitch of the Matrix. That's the fucking cat walking past twice. That's the window being bricked up. But ignoring the data for a moment, I will actually cover these. I will actually cover these 3 detachments. So Gladius, just generally speaking, Gladius Task Force has been. I'm going to say I think Gladius Task Force has been a phenomenal detachment. I think there's a really, really strong chance that Gladius Task Force is going to become the inheritor. That's because Ironstorm Spearhead has taken some hefty blows in the balanced data slate. Gladius Task Force is really, really flexible. And no matter what chapter, whether you're a special chapter or vanilla chapter, you are, Gladius Task Force has consistently been putting the work in. So I don't think there's been a week when there hasn't been at least 1 or 2 Space Marine chapters running Gladius that haven't got close to 50%, if not 50% win rate. First Company Task Force, dog shit, no one ever runs it. Anvil Siege Force, dog shit, no one ever really runs it. There is Anvil Siege Force guy, which it turned out we actually knew Anvil Siege Force guy. It was Jez from Thanatos. He's been running his Imperial Fists a lot. Firestorm Assault, phenomenal detachment, but going to see a a serious decrease, I think, in use due to the change, due to you no longer being able to do assault and actions. So I think Firestorm's going to go the way of the Dodo. I think Ironstorm is going to go the way of the Dodo. Stormland Sky still going strong. He needs to be taking them the Space Wolves, but sometimes sometimes he just like, you know what, I'll take them Villain Marines. Stormland Sky going strong. But looking forward to the future, I think we're going to see the Vanguard meta incoming, but Vanguard is very swingy. Sometimes it gives it, sometimes it takes it away. If I was a betting man, I would say the Gladiator Task Force is going to be the new go-to attachment for a lot of Space Marines and Specialist Chapters as well. And then the last of the bottom 5 we've got here is the Adeptus Custodes. Yes. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Wow. It seems only yesterday that the Adeptus Custodes were the scourge of the meta, with player numbers and win rates skyrocketing. Looked like they were going to take over from Eldar. Looked like they were going to beat Necrons to the punch. And then that codex came out. That damn codex. And it seems that over the last 8 weeks, Custodes as a population has fallen off a cliff. Custodes win rates have fallen off a cliff. And you can see that. I mean, it's a rare day when you see the Adeptus Custodes in the bottom 5. That's not true. These days, it's all too common for Adeptus Custodes to be in the bottom 5. But Warhammer historians will tell you that Custodes being a bottom 5 faction is not normal. Not normal at all. I think the big problem with the Adeptus Custodes is there was a lot of reputational damage done with the codex. A lot of people moved away from the faction because either they didn't like what GW had done with the faction, or because they were sick and tired of every time they brought their Custodes out, people being like, "Oh, Custodes." And then also I think that a lot of the competitive players moved away from them because they were dog shit. Now the big question is going to be, are we going to see a resurgence? The internet drama train has somewhat moved on, and the internet tends to have a short memory as well. Things are remembered forever, but the mob mentality sort of moves on in many ways. Now, so that you might see people coming back now that the drama has died down a bit, and also there have been some changes to dev wounds in the update with the balance update. Only time will tell whether Custodes will return. If I was to hazard a guess, my prediction would be if Custodes have one viable build, just one oppressive viable build, I think we'll see the faction like a phoenix from the flames rise again. Because at the end of the day, this is competitive meta that we're talking about. And at the end of the day, an army can have whatever lore it wants. But if it wins games, that's where the competitive meta is going to go, especially if the drama's died down. Yeah. Moving out of the bottom 5 and into the middle of the pack, amazingly, Deathwatch. How the fuck is Deathwatch not bottom tier? I'll explain why Deathwatch is not bottom tier. Because it's a small sample size. So occasionally, Deathwatch had some insanely, like, I think like last week, Deathwatch were technically on top with like an 87% win rate. You know what I mean? Like, but it wasn't. It was like it's like 2 guys had just done well at a tournament. So the Deathwatch is very much an anomalous faction, and when it comes to anomalous, the data is very anomalous. And when looking at them, if you want to look at the health of faction, you need to look at the number of players. And frankly, 2 players out of 500 plus players a weekend, very, very, very low. Now, Deathwatch they're just... The problem with them right now, so just going to the data, 2 players, they won 5 out of 10 games, 50% win rate, compare that to the 44% win rate. And they never won a tournament over the last 8 weeks/2 months. Both of the guys that ran this weekend used Black Spear Task Force, and that 50% win rate is kind of in line with the this week. It's kind of in line with the 45% win rate over the last 8 weeks. Now, we've also had some other like detachments pop up here, like Firestorm and Ironstorm, Spearhead, and Vanguard. We've got basically next to no data for these over the last 8 weeks because people just haven't really been running them with Deathwatch in the tournaments that have been recorded by this data set. So we're going to ignore those just for the time being because that could be one guy. This literally could be represented by one guy in the last 8 weeks. That would pressure. The problem with Deathwatch right now is they're overcosted, and they've got some interesting rules and some interesting potential, but they just feel a bit overcosted. But I think the big problem with Deathwatch is they feel abandoned. They feel abandoned, and so when a faction has the perception of being abandoned by Games Workshop, it does not encourage people to buy in, or at the very least, does not encourage people to take them seriously for a tournament. I think if Deathwatch was to just get a bit of love and attention, I think if people were to see from Games Workshop that they actually gave a shit about this faction, it would, even though the win rate wasn't that great, it would coax a bit of life into them. The big problem with Deathwatch, though, is that they've been oversimplified and heavily constrained. Deathwatch is a faction all about every individual guy. It's not a unit with standard issue equipment. Each Deathwatch member has their own heraldry from their own chapter. Each Deathwatch member, in many ways, brings their own gear and quirks and equipment and unique bits of fighting style, which all come together to form, which make the Deathwatch a phenomenal fighting force because they can draw upon so many different techniques, so much shared collective knowledge. And right now, the Deathwatch, all of their guns, they're interesting like combat shotguns, they're interesting like Deathwatch bolters. All of that shit just got boiled down into long vigil weapon. And then you've got some guys who've got like power saws, some guys like power axe, some guys like power mauls, some guys with like double lightning claws and all that kind of stuff. And now it's just long vigil melee weapon. The problem is that Deathwatch are meant to be an arm. They're meant to be like the Bretonians of 40k, where each guy is an individual and each model can become its own, in a funny, not like rules wise, but can feel like it's got its own story. And it's just meant to, and at the end of the day, they're meant to be elite badasses with unbelievably flexible equipment. That's their whole thing. The Grey Knights blow people's heads up with their fucking minds. Okay, their weapon is their minds. The Sisters' weapons is their faith. And the Deathwatch fucking weapons, the Deathwatch main weapons is like just having good gear. That's what made them so cool. They weren't psychers, they weren't fanatics, they were just damn good. They had good tactics, good gear. They were cool. That was their thing. The Deathwatch were the men in black. They were the suits. That's what they were. And they do not feel like that. So as a result, why would people want to be taking this faction? A lot of people probably own Deathwatch, but why would someone run this faction now if when they use it they feel disappointed? So Deathwatch, they're hit by so many. To sum it all up, Deathwatch points are too high. Deathwatch rules are too standardized, and the perception of the faction is that they've been abandoned. That is why you see very little Deathwatch numbers, And that's why when they have one guy goes to a local GT that happens to be recorded on BCP and managed to go 4-1, that's why they're not at the bottom, and that's how they've managed to get a 44% win rate on average over the last 8 weeks. Moving on, we have Tau. Oh man. Tau. Okay. Let's look at the data in front of us, and then let's talk about the future of Tau. 26 players, good numbers. This is a relatively quiet week with 500-ish players, good numbers. 55 wins out of 119 games, giving them a 46% win rate. This is somewhat in line with their 45% win rate over the last 8 weeks. Bear in mind that I think that 8 weeks is going to include weeks when the Tau didn't even have their codex. So that I may be wrong on that, though. Forgive me if I am. Over the last 8 weeks, Tau were able to win 4 tournaments, meaning they won a tournament every other week on average. Out of those 4 tournaments that were won, 2 of them were won by Kion. So there were 6 players this week that ran Kion. They managed to get a 50% win rate, which is slightly higher than their 47% win rate on average over the last 8 weeks. Like I said, they had 2 tournament wins. Crew Hunting Pack continues to put some interesting work in. 2 players managing to also get a 50% win rate, which is in line with the 50% win rate of the last couple of weeks, last 8 weeks. And then we've got Retaliation Cadre, where we see, which is the Battlesuit one, which people seem to be trying to make work, but Retaliation Cadre, it's high risk, high reward, and yet it seems like it's more, it's high risk, high failure. Every week that we've seen this thing hitting the tables, it has been one of the lowest performing detachments. I think people who just have a lot of battlesuits feel like they have to take this attachment and it's not really working for them. The biggie, though, is Monk Ka, and you can see that reflected in the player numbers here. Almost half of all Tau players this week ran Monk Ka, so it's a good sample size. They were able to win 25 out of 54 games with a 46% win rate, perfectly in line with their win rate of the last 8 weeks, and they even won a tournament in the last 8 weeks as well. So for those that aren't familiar with Monk Ka, basically it gives you all of your guys assault, and it gives you lethal hits when guided in the first 3 turns. And guiding, you're always going to be guided. Tau have been trying different things out over the last few weeks, but they're starting to coalesce around Monk Ka. I think some people are expecting Monk Ka to go down in popularity because of Pariah Nexus really sort of lowering the usefulness a bit of the assault part of that attachment. For me, the real killer is the lethal hits, though. The army-wide lethal hits, basically for 3 turns, the first 3 turns, phenomenal. The big thing, though, so right now, I think at the end of this meta, I think Tau were in a really, really good spot. I think they were. I think they were on the cusp of greatness. With Pariah Nexus, I think they are going to do extremely well out of it. And the reason is fairly simple. They didn't get fucked with. If you're a Tau basically received overall quite significant points cuts. The only thing going up was their hammerheads. And they received no changes to their rules in the balanced data slate. I have to say, I think Tau really, as someone who's used them this weekend, I'd say I think Tau truly have the potential to be just monsters. Absolute monsters, man. I think we're going to see a Tau meta incoming. I do. I don't know what I'm not sure what hard counters Tau. My instinct is to say something like Wolf Jail, some sort of pressure list, but then if you want to run slap bang into a Monk car gun line, you might be like, oh, they've only got one turn to shoot me. They only really need one turn. I guess the big thing with Monk, I guess the big thing would be terrain. What's gonna affect Tau is gonna be terrain. If we enter a meta which GW has mixed the terrain up quite a lot. If we enter a meta where terrain is going to be pretty heavy. It's already quite heavy, but if we're going to be entering quite an even heavier terrain meta, that's the one thing that could stop Tau, I think, because they do rely upon line of sight. They rely upon line of sight for guiding, and they rely upon line of sight for their shooting. And unlike Guard, they don't have a lot of units, or they don't have a lot of units that like to sort of act as outside of Kroot, that kind of like to act as screening. Kroot are good, but Kroot are kind of expensive. 75 points for 10 is fucking expensive. I think Tau are a faction to be aware of, and I think Tau are a faction to be ready for. They may not break out, they may stay where they are, but I suspect that Tau are going to become a common sight in the meta. I think they'll get to the point where you'll start going to a GT. Maybe not every GT, but every other GT you're going to get paired into Tau at some point. Yeah. That's where I think they are right now. They've been waiting a long time for their codex. They've got a good codex. They've got a good detachment. They've got a lot of decent points cuts. I think the Tau are ready for a 6th sphere expansion. I think so. Tau Huckabee. Shouldn't most armies require line of sight? I thought indirect fire was bad. Yes, Tau will have no issue getting into a direct firefight. Direct line of sight, what I mean by that is assault armies might run up to them. If assault armies can jump from cover to cover and then charge them, they're going to be in a little bit of trouble. Yeah. All right. Next, we have got the best faction in the entire game, hands down. The Emperor's true finest. His Imperial Guard. The hammer of the Emperor. The shield of the Imperium. The men with the giant brazen balls. In his name. Damn right, Northern Gen. In his name. Now, I'm pretty happy with where, Guard are looking at this. Guard are plays fairly decently over the last 8 weeks. You can see here that we have that Guard had 26 players this week. That is as many as Tau. That's as many as Tyranids. That might put us as one of the most played factions this week. There were more Guard players than Necron players this week. That is a first. In fact, we were joint third, the most popular faction, which is something we've been in that position for a few weeks now. So I love seeing this Guard high player count. 66 games won this weekend out of 126 games played, giving us a 52% win rate. Yes! The win rate is climbing. Operation Ocean Gate is beginning to surface. Now, Guard had a 45% win rate over the last 8 weeks, putting us bang in the Goldilocks zone. And we've had 6 tournament wins over the last 8 weeks. Look, guys, the big news here is we're better than Tau. Okay? We are better than the Tau. And that's all that matters. As long as we're better than Tau, that's what we're all about. Now, winning 6 tournaments is pretty good. There aren't many factions that have done better than that. You've got Chaos Space Marines, Necrons, Thousand Suns, and Grey Knights as Space Wolves. So out of 26 factions in Warhammer 40k, Guard got into the top 8. We have won the 6th most tournaments in the last 8 weeks. So there's a lot to be proud of here. Now, I know there's going to be a big question hanging over everyone's head at the moment, which is, do we think the win rate is going to go up and going to go down? My prediction is that the guard win rate is going to go down for a time, but then it's going to start climbing back up again. We see this all the time whenever there is a change, especially a big change like we've seen over the last week with the balanced data slate. Whenever there is a big change, the guard win rate goes down because guard is an experience-led faction. When we have experience, when we've built up a few games and we know how to handle like new missions and new opponents, then we do well. But when we enter a new era, a new epoch, as it were, we don't have that experience. So it takes a little while. We have to maybe lose, maybe not our first 10 games that we did when we first started with the faction. We have to lose maybe the next 5 games of the new meta to go, oh, so this is how this mission works. This is how this army works and all that kind of stuff. I think the guard population numbers are going to go down. I don't know for sure. Right now, it seems like a lot of current guard players aren't happy about the changes, and so you might see some people, and a lot of guard players are quite burned out by the rate of change as well. So we may see player numbers dip down a little bit as people maybe go and have a palette cleanse, try to take a break from 40k or try a different army. But I think overall, in the long term, we're probably going to see, like the win rate, the guard player count rise up. And I think that we're still going to be an army which may not have the highest win rate, but always has really good representation. And the reason I think that is because, firstly, people will go and have their palette cleanse, and then they'll get that itch, and then they'll remember that it's not about winning with the guard. The reason they love the guard is because of the fucking guard, and the feel, and the vibe, and the lore, and all that kind of stuff, okay? People will go and have the little palette cleanse, and then they'll just, guard, collecting guard, it's like, collecting orcs, you just fucking, you love it. You just love it. You love the guard. So you'll have a lot of people who'll go away, they'll come back. I think we'll also have a lot of people who will see what the changes have done for the guard, and it will entice them in. I think we'll see people who were like, I don't want to collect indirect fire, and now they'll be like, oh, like tanks are good. Great, I want to collect guard. I like tanks. Let's do it. So I think what we'll see is a little dip in the win rate, a little dip in the player numbers, and then I think we'll see nature start to heal, and we'll see the win rate and the player numbers climb up as people get tempted back to playing the guard, and as people start trying out new changes and realizing that there's a lot of other play styles that benefit from the changes. Hybrid guard loves new changes. Mech guard loves new changes. Armored guard loves the new changes. Infantry guard can still be played, but it's going to feel the pain without reinforcements. And artillery guard is probably really the main one that's not happy right now. But scions work, and that's it really. At the end of the day, guard doesn't have one play style. If you wake up and go one morning, I want to collect mech guard, you can do. Next morning you wake up and go, I want to have a close combat army. Guard have got you. And next time you wake up, you go, I want to have a tank army. Guard has got you. That's what, and I think at the end of the day, that's one of the big things that allows guard to have quite a high player reputation when things are bad, because there's a guard army for everyone's playstyle out there. Aggressive, defensive, offensive, defensive. Yeah, there you are. So moving on from the guard. I know I could sit here just talk about the guard all the time, man. But moving on from the guard, Chaos Knights. Chaos Knights had 14 players this week, 36 victories out of 68 games played, with a 53% win rate, which is a really good win rate this week. with a 47% win rate over the last 8 weeks. That all looks really good, really strong showing. I think what gives away the secret of Chaos Knights, what gives away the weakness, the Achilles heel, is the number of tournaments won. Over the last 8 weeks, they have not won a single. That is pretty bad. I think what this goes to show is that Chaos Knights, you can go 3-2 with them, you can go 4-1 with them, you can spam the ever-living fuck out of little baby war dogs and all that good stuff. But that will get you a positive win-loss, but it won't get you a tournament win. Will we see Chaos Knight players finally drop the war dogs and take the big knights now that the big knights can walk over ruins? Maybe. I think Imperial Knights were already taking big things, as they're going to benefit from it. I think Chaos Knight players are going to... They've been spamming war dogs all through 9th, all through 10th so far. I think they're going to find it difficult to let go of that safety blanket. Like Tyranid players find it difficult to let go of Invasion Fleet, I think Chaos Knights are going to find it difficult to let go of war dogs. But if someone takes the plunge, starts doing really well with it, then great. If they don't see the results from it, they'll just continue doing what they were doing, because if it still allows them to go to tournament and come away with a positive win-loss, then most Chaos Knight players will take that to the bank. Chaos Demons! 17 players, 38 wins out of 79 games played, 48% win rate. 48% win rate over this weekend, which is almost perfectly in line with their 47% win rate over the last 8 weeks, and they have won one tournament the last 8 weeks. Chaos Demons are a phenomenal 3-2, 4-1 faction, but they suffer exactly the same way that Chaos Knights do. They very, very, very rarely can actually win a tournament and go all the way. And in fact, if I remember correctly, this tournament win wasn't even achieved with a 5-0. A Chaos Knight player went 4 wins, 0 losses, and 1 draw, because they just had more points in those games. Overall, 2 or 3 players went 4-0-1, and the Chaos Demons have managed to score a few extra battle points, which is why they got the gold. So Chaos Demons really, this is a tournament win and well done, but really they're 4-1. And the reason why Chaos Demons are at best a 4-1 faction, really more like a 3-2 faction, is because there's always they only have one trick. Like Chaos Knights, they only have one trick. And Chaos Demons, it's take 4 to 5 big monsters, a little bit of chaff, hope the monsters keep the enemy distracted, whilst the chaff scores the points. That tactic will work well 3 or 4 games in a row. The problem is when you get to the top table or near the top table, you are going to encounter someone that A, knows how to beat your trick because they've done it before because they're at the top table for a reason, or B, they don't have one trick. They're just running the best army or one of the best armies in 40k right now, and that can do many, many tricks, can do everything. And then they end up outscoring you and outkilling you and all that kind of stuff. So this is the problem with some of these one-dimensional armies. They only have one trick, and every trick has an Achilles heel. Next, we've got Leagues of Votann. Leagues of Votann, there's not really much to say about them. They had 15 players, which is decent numbers. 35 wins out of 75 games played, giving them a 47% win rate, which is pretty much perfectly in line with their 47% win rate over the last 8 weeks. They've even managed to win a couple of tournaments. Leagues of Votann have been kind of treading water with this mid-tier result, this sort of mid-tier status, since they had their big update. Beginning at 10th, they were very, very bad, and then they had an overhaul to their army ability, or detachment ability, whichever one it might be, and now they've been solid. Votann have been seeing some really good results with Necrons being around, because they kind of hard counter Necrons. What's interesting to see is as Necrons have declined, Votann seemed to have retained their power boost. So it wasn't just that they were anti-meta, it turned out that they were solid. Overall, there's nothing really new to add about Votann. The lists that they take to tournaments are still very much the same, although we are seeing a few Hecaton land fortresses about these days. But it's Terminator dudes doing a load of wounds and grenade launch, dev wounds and grenade launch shots. It's a couple of Sagittarius knocking about, Hecaton knocking about. Yeah, it's not nothing over the. I would say over the last 8 weeks, Votann have been one of the factions that have seen the least evolution. And I think what the faction is crying out for, if I was to add my own analysis, is there are factions crying out for a second wave. It's very surprising to me that Votann haven't had a second wave yet. We must be coming up to 2 years of their release. 2 years on. No second wave. I remember in 8th edition when Genestealer Cult were released as a faction, we got the first wave, and then I think it was 6 months later, we got the second wave. So Leagues of Votann have, since their release, they've had a dozen data sheets. A long time to go without any additional data sheets. I think that faction needs it to just. They're not in a bad place, but it feels like the faction is starting to feel a little stale. Bishop Baker, that's a little short-sighted W. Hey, that's going in the book. I want to say next, another faction that is in exactly the same boat is World Eaters. World Eaters are 21 players, 50 wins out of 103 games, giving them a 49% win rate this week, which is slightly higher than their 47% win rate over the last 8 weeks. In fact, over the last 8 weeks, World Eaters have been able to win 3 tournaments, which is not too bad at all. You know, getting a tournament win is difficult. Now, World Eaters are again a faction that was released towards the end of 9th edition that has seen no attention since. And the problem with World Eaters is the same reason why they don't. They're in the same boat as Chaos Knights, in the same boat as Chaos Demons. Admittedly, they seem to be slightly better than those factions. They have been able to get 3 tournament wins. But generally speaking, the faction has got a problem where it's just the same shit in every single list. I have not been to a tournament when there's been World Eaters and not seen Angron. Is a huge crutch at the moment, and the issue is that it's because World Eaters really don't have a huge amount of things that they can yeet across the board in 22 turns, twat someone with, and destroy lots of vehicles and stuff with. Yeah, they're just overly reliant on Angron. It's, I think, a credit to the pure fucking berserk fury and unrelenting hatred of the World Eaters that out of all the factions that I would say are one-trick ponies, like Chaos Knights, like Chaos Demons, like World Eaters, like Leagues of Votann, they are the one with the highest win rate, and they are the one with the most tournament wins. So World Eaters are a one-trick pony. They do seem to have a little bit more juice for the squeeze than a lot of other one-trick ponies, but they definitely are in need of a second wave, because it might sound crazy, and a lot of World Eater players might disagree with me, but as someone who actually has played World Eaters in the past, admittedly this was a long time ago, but bear with me, I played World Eaters in 6th and 7th edition, when I wanted a palette cleanser. They're actually one of my first palette cleansers that I ever got into, and wanted a little break from the guard. I used them for about 3 or 4 months. I shoved berserkers in rhinos, ran at people, had a land raider, the whole 9 yards, ran a rush, all that kind of stuff. And I absolutely loved it until I'd had my fill. And then I was like, there's nothing more to this faction. This is when they were within Chaos Space, they weren't their own faction. There's nothing more to this faction. And so I did the whole World Eater Berserk Charge thing. It was fun, it was cathartic, but I sort of completed that chapter of my hobby life, and I've never really found the urge to go back to it. And that's the problem that World Eaters have right now, is you can only have that cathartic, I don't give a fuck charge so often before it's like, I want a faction with a bit more depth. Interesting. And I'm not doing the same fucking thing every fucking game. Just Cosby, why did you want to break from Guard in 6th, 7th edition? Guard was so tragically bad in 6th and 7th edition that occasionally you just needed a break from getting bent over and thoroughly rogered 5 games in a row at a tournament. Next, we have got Chaos Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines, well, let's look at the face value first. So 38 players is actually a really, really popular army. Might even be the most popular army of the weekend. Note, the second most popular army of the weekend. 82 players, the 184 wins. Sorry, 38 players, 82 victories out of 184 games. That last sentence was completely wrong. 45% win rate this week against a 47% win rate over the last 8 weeks. 10 tournament wins. Although I think pretty much like all of those were last week, or over the last couple of weeks since the codex dropped. Now we can see, you can see that over the last 8 weeks, 100 and like so much of their games were. It's very good of the Metamiller guide. This is all like the pre-codex stuff, but we'll look at the codex stuff for now. Okay, so Deceptors, incredibly cool army, amazing on paper, fantastically fluffy, absolutely dog shit. Right now, Dread Talons, exactly the same. Spellhammer Siege Host, a surprising letdown. I thought the durability boost would be enough to make this one a real winner. Turns out that 40k is so goddamn lethal that no amount of defensive buffs really help you. Pack-bound Zealots, basically old Slaves of Darkness, but a little worse. Renegade Raiders. This is the one where you run around basically using your assault weapons to do all of the actions. It's like kind of like Monka. Nah, it's nothing like Monka. It's like Firestorm Assault. Soulforge Warp Pack. This is the one which basically it has the most damage output, but you rattle yourself to death. Seeing getting a tournament win and seeing some decent results over the last few weeks. And same for Veterans of the Long War, ending up being it was the blandest attachment, and it also seems like it's one of the worst. Now that's what's happened this week. Looking to the future, I think we're going to see a huge shakeup. I think we'll see Renegade Raiders come down. I could be wrong, but I think we'll see Renegade Raiders come down because Assault ain't going to help you do actions anymore. There is a non-zero chance, there's a possibility that Deceptors might become very, very meta. Likewise, there's a possibility that Dread Talons might become incredibly meta. And that is because both of those, in theory, play really well in Parade Nexus. Oh, you need to jump onto middle objectives and with battle line units. Oh, I don't know. How about I infiltrate 90 fucking battle line infantry onto objectives with cultists and with legionnaires? Yeah, that might do it. Oh, you can't do actions if you're battle shocked. Hold my flayed skull, says the Dread Talons. So, Chaos Space Marines, I think a lot of people are feeling quite down about the faction because they got hit by some points changes, which I think they weren't really expecting. I think there is going to be a shift with the Chaos Space meta. It'll be hard to see where it goes. I'd love for Deceptors and Dread Talons to become meta just because they're the coolest detachments. I suspect what will happen, and this could be wrong, but I suspect what will happen is a lot of people could pivot to Soulforged Warpack, which this might be a hot take that people are surprised with, but Soulforged Warpack just blows people off the table. And if in doubt, if you can't play smart, you can play hard. And sometimes the best way of scoring a game is just demolishing your opponent with damage output. And Soulforged Warpack can supercharge a lot of fucking units. So we'll see. Will Renegade Raiders retain its title? Will people go back to Pack-Bound Zealots? Will people try going full wannabe Tau with Soulforged Warpack? Or will the current people that are running Renegade Raiders who play smart move over to a couple of other detachments that might reward smart play as well? That is the big question. Okay. So we've covered Leagues of Votann, we've covered World Eaters, we've covered Chaos Space Marines, that's 3. We've got 2 more. We've got Eldari and Death Guard. Eldari. The faction that just refuses to die. 18 players. Not a bad turnout whatsoever. 46 victories out of 86 games played. Gives them a 53% win rate this week. They have an overall 47% win rate. And they have won 4 tournaments in the last 8 weeks. Eldar, despite the fact that they are, in my memory, the most nerfed faction again and again and again, are still solid middle of the pack. Really solid middle of the pack. Their player numbers are respectable for a very niche faction. Their win rate never drops below mid-40s and occasionally spikes like this to 50s. And they still, on average, every other week are bringing home another trophy, another tournament win. I think Eldar probably are in a bit of a Goldilocks zone right now. They're a 3-2 faction for a lot of people. Some people are able to go 4-1 with them, and occasionally someone gets the good run, or it's just that good that they get the 5-0, they get the tournament win. I suspect Eldar probably don't need any more changes now. They need a light touch, a light hand, just to keep them in line. But dare I say it, they may, if any other faction received that many nerfs, they'd be dead. Eldar are not dead. They are still very much a force to be reckoned with. They're just not oppressive. I know, crazy as it sounds, they're just not oppressive at the moment. We've got Death Guard. Oh, Death Guard, my secret love affair. Oh. Despite the fact that it's utter heresy, I am investing in more Death Guard because they're just so damn fun. Death Guard, I would say, they feel like the most consistently good heretic faction. There's probably a few other ones out there, like Thousand Suns. Thousand Suns are probably better overall, but Death Guard are a very solidly performing Chaos faction. The Plague Company detachment has, well, it's the only detachment for them, I suppose, at the moment. 23 players. That's good. That's Imperial Guard levels of numbers, boys. 60 wins out of 115 games, giving them a 52% win rate this weekend. That Death Guard win rate has been slowly climbing week on week. I think we should take note of that. Death Guard have been inexorably marching forward quite strongly over the last few weeks. Now that gives them. Now they have a 48% win rate on average over the last 8 weeks, and they've been able to get a couple of tournament wins as well. Death Guard are solid. Death Guard remind me a lot of Imperial Guard. There's good unit variety. There's obvious combos that reward well. Like, oh, I'll take a guy that gives me +1 to hit on a shooting unit. I'll take a guy that gives me strikes first on a combat unit. So they've got a nice variety of data sheets, a variety of play styles, and a variety of easy to put together combos. And they also have in my opinion, the best battle line infantry in the entire game. Plague Marines are the undisputed masters of battle line warfare. As someone who's been playing a lot of Death Guard recently, it breaks my heart, but Plague Marines cut through Imperial Guard blobs like a rusty knife through butter. My big question for Death Guard is if they do have the best battle line infantry in the game, and I've said this to a few top tier tournament players, and they've been like, yeah, they wouldn't dispute that. The big question is, can they leverage that in Pariah Nexus? The reason why it's not a clear-cut yes is because Death Guard tend to do very well. Their Plague Marines are very good as like shock troops. They're not really sitting around on objectives. So they might have the best battle line, but if that battle line isn't doing Pariah Nexus battle line things, they're not just sitting there doing actions and stuff, then I don't think that they'll get a radical boost from the whole thing. But I think Death Guard are in a very, very, very enticing position. And I think you can't go wrong with them as a faction. But they can go on the offensive. They're very defensive. There's no negatives to this faction, and that's why they're sitting on average between this week's results and their last 8 weeks, an average of 50%. That's a very, very tasty place to be in. Now we've had a few super chats come in here, but I'm going to push for the bird and actually do a couple more factions because they're quite quick. So I want to say a big thank you to Scroobius, Aqual, Unless Uniform, and Cosmic Drew. Thank you to all of you guys for your support and for your patience. I will get to you in a moment. G to the cult. They're in limbo. The faction's not been doing great, player numbers wise, for a long time now. And this week, I think, really sort of represents the lack of motivation for people to play the faction. 9 players is pretty low. That's like AdMech levels. 15 wins is only a 38% win rate. 49% overall means that they are a faction. 49%. But it's basically if you can roll 4 pluses, then you win. Most of the time. 1% margin for error. If you can't roll 4 pluses to get units back, you're fucked. And a lot of people just don't like that. So, yeah, G to the cult, nothing really changed here. Occasionally, they have a good week where they absolutely spike to the fucking ceiling and end up in like the top 3 somehow. And someone must be using the Element Games Poo dice for their respawns. And then occasionally, and then the next week they will. The next week they'll be on 38%. Yeah, they're all over the place, guys, but there's not much really to think about here because, like I said, they've been kind of in limbo and on life support for a little while now. And now, a lot of people are saying the Codex is going to make them worse. I haven't seen much about the Codex, but quite a few people have told me the Codex is going to make them worse. I think the big thing, if I was going to be honest, this is the number I care about. The player number. This is the number I care about. So Genes to the Cult win rate could be like fucking average of 40%. They could be down there with the fucking nids. But as long as the Codex brings flavor, as long as the Codex removes all the janky 4+ bullshit mechanic, and it allows people to actually just play fucking games without having to live or die on 4+s. And I don't know, I haven't looked into it. But if that's changed, then I think we'll see, even if the win rate goes down, I think we'll see player numbers go up. That's my hot take. Imperial Knights, doing what they're doing, man. Couple of big knights, or big knight, couple of, it's not, Imperial Knights is not baby knight spam. Imperial Knights is a nice balance where they take like a few baby knights, a couple of medium knights with 1 big knight. 36 victories out of 72 games played, getting bang on 50%. That's in line with their 49% win rate, and they even managed to win 3 tournaments the last 8 weeks. Imperial Knights are the gatekeeper. They always have been. If you can kill a knight a turn, if you can go on average a big knight, a medium knight a turn, you beat them. If you can't, they beat you. For me, what I find most eyebrow raising is the fact that they've been able to win 3 tournaments. There must be a little bit more to them. Because gatekeeper factions rarely do, win tournaments. But maybe they got a good run. Maybe it was a local event. But thing is, most of the time, Imperial Knights, they smash them. Game 1, they smash game 2. They may smash game 3. Then game 4, they come across someone that can kill a lot of knights very quickly. And game 5, they might come across the same thing again. So they're, in my mind, they're a 3-2, 4-1er. Rarely a 5-0er, but clearly my mind is missing some things. But long story short, they're still the gatekeeper. The big thing here is I think Imperial Knights are going to benefit bigly. I think they're going to benefit majorly from being able to walk over building. Yeah. I think so. All right. We've got, what have we got left? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm going to push for the burn. Blood Angels. Then I can do the top 8. We'll do the top 8 in one run. Top 8 in one run. Okay. So I know I'm going to do Blood Angels quickly because they're another quick one. Blood Angels, the premier assault army of the Imperium right now. Some people may disagree and say Space Wolves. Space Wolves are very good, but they're Space Wolves are very good. Maybe the second premier assault army. 21 players, really good, healthy community considering like Dark Air had like 4 people this week. 46 wins out of 98 games played, giving them a 47% win rate this week, which is in line but slightly lower than their 49% win rate. 5 tournament wins is very respectable though. Pretty much all of this pretty much every week, Blood Angel players are just smashing the fuck out of Sons of Sanguinius. Occasionally someone tries Firestorm, occasionally someone tries like Gladius and Iron's Storm, and you can see that these factions have got a few players here and there and some interesting win rates. In fact, someone if you want a tournament with Blood Angels, Gladius. But but this is like one dude on his own. Every week we see 90% of Blood Angels players using the Sons of Sanguinius attachment, and it's kind of like the World Eater approach, right? They just run at you and chop you up. The difference is that Blood Angels got a lot more data sheet to draw upon. World Eaters have Angron, pretty much Angron to draw upon. Blood Angels, they have all of their own data sheets, and then they have all of the Space Marine data sheets. And this means that you don't have to run the same list every single time. Sometimes you can go way into Death Company. Sometimes you take a little bit of Death Company. Sometimes sometimes you want to have a little more balance. Like, okay, I'm going to do some choppy, but I'm going to soften the enemy up. I'm going to crack the transports open first with some firepower. If I was going to collect a fast-moving, assault-orientated power armor force, I would pick Blood Angels over World Eaters every day of the week. Because I've got so much more to interest me rather than just Angron and friends. I really like Sons of Sanguinius. I really like Blood Angels being Blood Angels, and I really hope that continues to be the case with the latest balance update with Pariah Nexus. We might see them spec a little bit more into like assault. I think assault intercessors with jump packs are battle lined. I think so. They might not be. Maybe it's just regular assault intercessors. I do hope that we see. I do hope that we see Blood Angel players not being punished for not traditionally running a lot of battle line. But we'll see. I'm going very much off historical precedent here. They may be running shitloads in their meta list. It's just historically, Blood Angels focused on just elite, hard-hitting, fast-moving units and a bit of token battle line here and there to take objectives. They may still go that way, or maybe they'll start balancing their army out a little bit. These are top 8 factions at the end of the Leviathan meta. We're going to take a look at how they have done over the last 8 weeks when they had their new points costs. And then we are going to make a quick prediction on how we think these factions are going to change going into Pariah Nexus. So, Black Templars. Week in, week out, Black Templars have been the Marine chapter that I feel has performed the most consistently. There are other Marine chapters which have done better some weeks, but Black Templars are always in the top 8, and they have been for a long time. This comes down to the fact that they have a variety of playstyles and a very dedicated community, and they also they've got a lot of different data sheets to draw upon. There are a lot of specific Black Templar ones, a lot of specific Black Templar characters that they really get good use out of, and then they have all of the Space Marine stuff as well. So Black Templars, 17 players this week, 39 victories out of 82 games played, giving them a 48% win rate this weekend. They have had a 49% win rate over the last 8 weeks. These two numbers are very, very close together. Like I said, they've been performing very consistently. Over the last 8 weeks, Black Templars have won 5 events. That's more than one every other weekend, which is a phenomenal result. Now, what's interesting is every single week, Righteous Crusade is the most popular Black Templar detachment, and yet over the last 8 weeks, no one has won a tournament with it. Black Templar players, they like playing as Black Templars, and so Righteous Crusade is going to be one that they're always going to be taking in great quantities because they want to kill, pray, burn. That's what they want to do. Now, where Black Templars have actually seen their best results have been with Ironstorm Spearhead, and this is because Black Templar vehicles for an extra 10 points each get a multi-melter. So the thing is though that even though Ironstorm has clearly been the better choice, they're the better choice this weekend with a 53% win rate and an average 53% win rate. And the fact that they've won out of the 5 tournaments that Black Templars have won, Ironstorm Spearhead has won 3 of them. 60% of all tournament wins go to for Black Templars go to Ironstorm Spearhead. And yet it never has more players than Righteous Crusaders. And that is because this is the Black Templar players. And this is the players that are playing Black Templars. Very, very big difference there. Gladius Task Force, we've mentioned this earlier before, has been consistently doing work. Sometimes the win rate's a little bit lower, sometimes it's phenomenally higher. But overall, Gladius Task Force, I think, is going to be a good place for competitive Black Templar players to pivot, considering that Firestorm and Ironstorm seem to have taken a bit of a beating in the balanced data slate. I think we're going to see Blood Angels and Black Templars switch over. I think Black Templars are normally consistently higher than Blood Angels. I think we'll see Blood Angels consistently higher than Black Templars. And that is because Sons of Sanguinius seems to be a little stronger than Righteous Crusade. Righteous Crusade, they're very, very equals. But I do feel like Black Templars have been benefiting from Ironstorm Spearhead, giving them a bit of a shot in the arm. Whereas I think Blood Angels, Sons of Sanguinius, and Black Templars say their main attachment is more of the fluffy fun one. Whereas the Blood Angels, their fluffy fun attachment is also their powerful one. I don't think Black Templars will drop down far at all. I don't. I think that they'll just basically trade place with the Blood Angels. Yeah. Necrons. Once the dominant force in the meta, now they seem to be a little reined in. Necrons can still consistently make the top 8 every week, but rarely do we see them absolutely on top, dominating absolutely everything. They still pull in good player numbers. 24 is very strong. They had a 49% win rate this week, which is very much in line with their 50% win rate over the last 8 weeks. They have seen 9 tournament wins, which is the second highest over the last 8 weeks. Of those 9 tournament wins, we have seen Canoptic Court get 6 of them, and Hypocrite Legion only get 2. For a long time, there was a duel of fates between Canoptic Court and Hypocrite Legion to see who would be the dominant Necron attachment, and Hypocrite was leading for such a long time, but Canoptic Court, after the Hypocrite Legion nerfs, Canoptic Court has cemented itself as the true dynasty. The up-and-coming dynasty is the Awakened dynasty, which this week had a fantastically shit result with only a 26% win rate. But you can see the potential there. It's got an average of 47%, and someone has actually won a tournament with the Awakened dynasty. If I were to make a prediction, if I was to wager, I think we may see more people trying out Awakened dynasty and the Silver Tide. Battle Line is potentially going to become more important with Pro Nexus, and even if it doesn't pan out, a lot of the time GW has plans like, "Ooh, we'll make Battle Line better," and then no one ends up taking it because it just blow everyone's Battle Line off the table with firepower. But presuming that GW's plan comes to fruition, Awakened Dynasty in theory should be an up and coming attachment with the Necrons because it is their Battle Line one. It's their one for Warriors, it's their one for Immortals, all that kind of stuff. So what we will have to wait and see is, will Battle Line be meaningful? Or will people just bulldoze over Battle Line with pure fucking firepower? We've then got Drukhari. Drukhari have, since their overhaul with the Sky Splinter Assault Detachment, they have become possibly the most consistent and balanced faction we've seen in terms of their results. Sometimes Dark Elder are a little bit higher. Like once every so often, they'll break into the 60s, and then once every so often, they'll dip into the 40s. But percent win rate, I should say. But every other week, it's like 50% down the middle, 50% down the middle, 50% down the middle. Everyone either goes 3-2 or 2-3 of them, pretty much. And that's reflected in these results. So as you can see, we had 14 Dark Elder players. They were able to achieve a 63% win rate. But on average, they've got 51% win rate. And they've won 3 tournaments, which is pretty reasonable. But you can see clearly it's Sky Splinter Assault, man. Sky Splinter Assault is responsible for winning every single tournament for the Dark Elder over the last 8 weeks. Real Space Raiders has been making a bit of a comeback. This is the second or third week in a row when we've seen them with some really strong results. But I suspect these are anomalous results due to a very, very small sample size. But maybe Real Space Raiders is making a bit of a comeback and it's not quite been caught on yet. With the changes with Pro Nexus, I don't anticipate any major changes with Dark Elder. The only exception to that, what might cause me to retract that, is pivot. Dark Elder, all of their vehicles are on like flying bases, so I believe they benefit from the free pivot. This is going to make them phenomenally maneuverable. They could get a lot of free movement out of the pivots if they so chose to. Dark Elder is either going to stay the same or movement wins games, and Dark Elder might start really bringing home some golds. I think they're a very interesting faction to watch. I think they're one that we're going to keep our little beady eyes on, and if we start seeing them going up and up, that'll be kind of cool. Sisters of Battle, breaking into the top 5 in 5th place. Sisters of Battle, this is Spam Sisters. This is when Sisters were really, really, really cheap and undercosted. But this is also Index Sisters, so they've not had this is not their codex. Right now, Sisters players, we've seen some pretty consistent player numbers, and as you can see, they've been winning. 48% is somewhat in line with their 51% average win rate, and they have won 5 tournaments in the last 8 weeks. So really, a lot of stuff for the Sisters to be proud of. It took them a long time for the Sisters community to work out that like going full melee wasn't the way. The issue I think Sisters are going to have is adapting to the new codex. The new codex with the new points values has made them very elite. So we've heard reports of some Sisters lists going up 200 to 300 points. That's 10 to 15 to 20% points cut for a lot of people. Now, the word on the street was that before those points changes, Sisters of Battle were like pre-nerfed Eldar. Now, that I find that a very strong accusation to make. But clearly GW felt the same way as they did something they haven't done. I can't remember the last time they did this in 10th edition. They preemptively nerfed them. They didn't even preemptively nerf Eldar. They waited a couple of weeks to see how fucking balked they were. Then they nerfed them. I'm not a Sisters player. They're not that common around my way. But the word on the street is that even with the nerfs, they're looking spicy. They're still potentially inheritors of the meta. In 4th place, we have the Orcs. Orcs. So right now, Orcs are the most played. As at the end of Leviathan, Orcs are the most played army with 45 players. And they stormed onto the scene. When they had their index, it was like when they had their index, they would start to dip to like 30 to 40% win rates. Like between 30 and 40%. That's because everyone has got very used to the pressure list. Since their codex has come out, Orcs have absolutely smashed the competitive scene. It has been a green meta. 49% win rate this week, 52% win rate over the last 8 weeks with 15 tournament wins. Oh. So Orcs definitely needed reining in. Has GW gone too far? They have completely gutted Bully Boys, which was responsible for well over half of the tournament wins that they got. They've completely gutted Green Tide. That was responsible for 20% of the tournament wins. Orcs are a resilient bunch. They are a faction and a community that is used to improvising, adapting, and overcoming. But those nerfs were hard, man. Points increases plus ability changes. I don't want to be pessimistic, but I feel like the competitive community may shift away from Orcs. I feel like people are already moving on from them. Shame. Their time in the sun was short-lived, but it was a hell of a time. Thousand Suns, aka the Bullshit Boys. The Thousand Suns are a sleeper. For a lot, I sort of blew the whistle on this months ago. A lot of people didn't believe me, but I blew the whistle on this about 3 months ago around Adepticon when I got talking to some very competitive players who said Thousand Suns fucking horrendous. I then had the opportunity to play against them a couple of times, and they were fucking horrendous. Double Doombolt. Combined with fantastically durable battle line, combined with incredible Overwatch, Mutileth Vortex Beast, Demon Princess, amazing. Thousand Suns, however, have, I believe, been hit somewhat hard by the balanced data slate. I could be wrong. I feel like they can't do double Doombot anymore, although, again, I could be wrong on that. Thousand Suns were going to be the inheritors of the meta. You can see a lot of people starting to pick up on this with 17 players, a 55% win rate, which is actually higher than the average of... I've got fucking hair on my mouse. The average of 53% over the last 8 weeks and 8 tournament wins. Considering that, look at these numbers here. Like, the Thousand Suns had less than half of the players of Orcs, and that's pretty consistent every week. They had proportionally more tournament wins. Thousand Suns. Has Tzeentch blessed them with the ability to ride the changes in the meta? Or Are they going to be going down? Are they going to be shutting those automata down? Magnus is still pretty good. Magnus is still probably the best demon Primarch out there. Probably. But I don't play them, so I won't say for sure. So they got the bronze medal. Grey Knights. Grey Knights is where all the Custodians players went. Everyone who's playing Custodians competitively went, fuck this, went over to Grey Knights. Very easy to paint. And a relatively easy army to pilot. 6 Dread Knights. See you later. 24 wins. 24 players with a 53% win rate, I should say. Which is very in line with the average of 54% rate. A 54% win rate. 7 tournament wins. Again, very, very impressive. Grey Knight's been a bit of a journey since the beginning of 10th edition. They started off shite. Turns out if you make Nemesis Dread Knights so cheap you can spam 6 of them, that they're actually not shite. However, Games Workshop has now put the points up on the Dread Knights, and you will no longer be able to spam 6 of them and get all of your little objective units as well. Will going down to 4 or 5 Dread Knights make a big difference? Yes. I think we'll see Grey Knights drop down a little bit. I still think they're still going to be looting the corpse of the Custodies, but the Custodies, if they're getting better with dev wounds, might start taking their community back, taking their players back. And so last, but certainly not least, in fact, first, we have got Space Wolves. And let me have a little drink here. They're a really difficult one to judge. Because on the one hand, their player numbers aren't super high. Like they're pretty common, but they've never been Orc common. They've never been Custodians common. But their win rate has been obnoxious for the last 8. I think Space Wolves have been, in the last 8 weeks, Space Wolves have been on top most weeks. Or at least, they've been on top at least more than once. They had 16 players with a 58% win rate this weekend. Over the last 8 weeks, they've had a 55% win rate, which is the highest of any faction. And they've had 7 tournament wins, which means they've pretty much nearly had an average of a tournament win every single. The way Space Wolves are playing, in case you're curious, is Wolf Jail. This is where they take a shitload of Thunderwolf cavalry, they load them up with as many goddamn heroes as they can get their hands on, and then they pray to Russ, the Allfather, and to whatever else they fucking believe in. They can roll 4+ vulnerable saves. They tend to be, and it seems like they are able to roll them, because they basically they go in Stormlance attachment. I see the vast majority of players are in Stormlands, so that's where the majority of wins were coming in this week. And you can also see that is where that's where every single tournament win came from for Space Wolves. Yeah, Stormlands detachment over the last 8 weeks has had a 59% win rate and has won every single tournament for the Space Wolves. That is a problem. That is not good. That has gone beyond the realms of being a one-off. That's gone beyond the realms of being an anomaly. That is now consistently an extremely overperforming. What's going to change for Space Wolves? What's going to change for Space Wolves? Well, their detachment, their fluffy detachment, Sons of Rust, did get updated. The question and the thing to watch is, will Space Wolf players migrate away from Stormlands to their fluffy detachment? Now, I feel like Stormlands, and I could be wrong here, correct me on the chat, I feel like Stormlands and Space Wolves in general didn't really get many changes in the balance update. I may be wrong here, please. I haven't looked at it. I'm sort of going off instinct and going off chatter. If the fluffy detachment is good and ends up being rewarded, I'd like to think that we'll see Space Wolves doing a Black Templars and doing a Blood Angels and starting running their Space Wolves as Space Wolves. But I think it's going to be very difficult for them to give up that fucking Stormlands crack pipe they have been sucking on for fucking forever, man. I've been saying this a little bit over the last few weeks, but I'm going to reiterate it here. Wolf Jail's getting old now. I'm fucking bored of being put in Wolf Jail. It's unfun to play in. It's unfun to play against because you feel like the agency is being taken away from you. I hope that Stormlance gets reined in. I hope that Space Wolves get reined in. But apparently Stormlance got no changes and Thunderwolf Cavalry just went up 10 points per 3 models. That's not enough. That's an extra 30 points Space Wolves are going to have to find. They'll find that 30 points, man. If that's the only change Stormlance had, then I think that the Stormlance meta was already here. And I think the Stormlance meta is going to be here today. I want to comment on Pariah Nexus. The reception to Pariah Nexus has been mixed. I think the big reason for that is the breakneck pace at which the game has been updated and changed. We have seen incredible. We've seen just a huge amount of points changes, rules changes. The rules commentary now is almost as long as the core rules themselves. 10th edition. The thing about 10th edition is always something new and exciting to talk about. The worry with 10th edition is people get burned out and worn out from it. Overall, though, I think I'm excited for Pariah Nexus. I'm excited to try out the new deployments. I'm excited to try out the new missions. And I'm really, really excited to embrace as a guard player, embrace my inner Steel Legion and crush the enemies of the Emperor underneath many a mechanized dread. That's all for now. Guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching. And of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian Glory Hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Mad Larkin, Marcus Roberts, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Varney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.